Hello, and welcome to Leviathan News. Today is July 25th, and we have Jason Hitchcock from Thirdweb here to come and talk about developer tooling today. We are in a multi-chain world now. I think there's hundreds, soon to be thousands of different networks that are going to be popping up, all with their different infrastructure, all with their different apps that they have, kind of underlying systems that they run on. And it's starting to become an issue to work as a developer across all these networks, especially if you're a applications providing cross-chain support, or if you're just replicating your app and moving it somewhere else, right? It's can be a difficult process sometimes. And so there really hasn't been a great solution for this until Thirdweb came along. And today we have Jason here to talk about some of the issues about developer tooling and why it's a big problem that everybody deals with, but nobody's talking about. So welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Huge fan.
Jason, tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Delighted to be here. Been a longtime follower of CurveCap and the Curve ecosystem. I'm so excited for Leviathan News. I've loved tuning in every day and hearing this level of conversation. So appreciate you having me on. Quick background, I spent the last 12 years doing early stage startups. I'd always be the first business guy you'd hire to build out a sales team or a marketing team. I started a startup that with a team of people that Twitch ended up acquiring. That same group of people actually went off to go create Thirdweb. And so that's one reason why I joined them. After I left Twitch, I spent a few years kind of starting to become an angel investor. When DeFi summer started, I started a liquid token fund that did pretty well. And now I'm a sub-advisor to a hedge fund that does DeFi investing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I invest in startups, I coach founders. And then I was working with Thirdweb. That was a company I invested in and I was advising them. And they became a really great developer tool company that started to really get a lot of the mind share. And so I joined them about 8 months ago to lead their ecosystem team, where I work with all the different chains that we support and investors to support their portfolios. And what is Thirdweb? It's a developer tool. It's a complete framework for building anything that you want to build in Web3. And we were talking right before this call, what is where is this sort of in the history of how software is playing out? And I would just say if you were to go back during DeFi summer, everybody that was building a protocol, they didn't actually have access to a lot of crypto native developer tools. When a developer is leaving, maybe they have experience in mobile app development or web development and they're entering Web3, they've been inspired, they've read things, they listen to your podcast or read your newsletter. They're I'm ready to do this, I have ideas. What ends up happening is developers encounter a really steep learning curve. It's a completely new computing platform, the blockchain. I need to get familiar with RPC nodes. I need to get familiar with wallets and wallet connection flows. I need to learn about all the user experience edge cases where users fall off and find errors. And next thing you know, developers need to learn there's 15 big ideas that are brand new. And there's not one place that's introduces all these ideas to you at once. You sort of learn them through oral history and talking to people and trying things and being oh, why doesn't this work? And then you need to go learn a new tool.
So what are some of those 15 things that developers have to come in and learn?
Yeah, you have to learn about RPC nodes. Your smart contracts need to communicate with the blockchain. You'll need to learn about maybe gasless relayers. Perhaps you're making a video game and you need to have transactions in your game that are non-monetized because you want to have a lot of your game on chain, and not everything is a profitable transaction. Some things are just hey, you have this fun item, and so you need to learn about gasless relayers. You might need to learn about just how to deploy contracts. It's not just about shipping your app. There's a whole flow for deploying a smart contract. You might need to learn about smart contract security and auditing and things like that. And so all these concepts are their own bag of worms. And so where Thirdweb comes in is we make all those all those like tools, everything you need is all in one tool set. So like when you come into our documentation, whatever your idea is, you don't really need to leave our documentation to build your thing. We have all the infrastructure there. We have SDKs that turn, smart contracts into code into like Python and JavaScript. We have fiat on ramps. So like every puzzle piece you need is there. And so that's kind of a new idea in crypto development. Like before, you would have to sort of use a Frankenstein monster of many services that all do one thing. You would get on lots of demo calls, sign lots of contracts. This is a completely different side of crypto than what you're normally talking about. But like on the dev side, like their life is a bit of a nightmare. And there's a lot of tools that they don't trust. And that side of the industry is building its own credibility right now.
What's really amazing to me as a developer is just how much the developer experience has improved between now and like 5 years ago when I first took a shot at this. Like, I don't know if you were around for this because you said you were like kind of fell into this after DeFi summer. Like back in the day, you had to download a special browser. The whole experience was super clunky. It's become like a developer's dream now. And Thirdweb is, of course, like, in my opinion, like really putting together a lot of killer use cases for people who are just getting their feet wet to experienced developers.
Well, I've seen you do some projects out there. Like you taught people how to build a stable coin once. Like, what was your experience like as you were trying to learn how to go through that process?
So I'm like a little bit not your typical developer in that like I do everything using Vim, which if you know anything about development is like it's like one of like the most lightweight possible text editors for like very basic Linux browsers. And I got into that just because like when I started developing, like you might not have like a reliable internet connection. You might be dealing with like 56K modem. So I just never was like the kind of person that like would download a massive developer suite and like learn to make doing like sticks and stones rudimentary stuff. So my developer experience, even despite that, is like improving drastically. But just like the advances I've seen in things like Remix and all sorts of other like tools like Thirdweb, it's really maturing, and it's like a great time for people who want to develop to be able to jump in.
I think one thing that's really fascinating right now is over like the years in crypto, you've had different types of, I guess, technologists coming into the industry that sort of drive, I guess, the zeitgeist. So if you go back to the beginning, you had basically, it was almost cryptographers and like deep technologists and even like political, like there's even like people into a certain politics were drawn to crypto. And then maybe in like the 2016, 2017 time, like there were more operating systems people drawn to crypto. And that's where you had like more layer one sort of like more layer ones were created. And then I think around like the launch of Compound and like initial DeFi protocols, and then like DeFi summer, I think that helped spark the imagination of a lot of application layer people who are coming in. They're like, oh, like they can build a lot of different types of apps. They're really just thinking about interfaces and they're all pretty clunky. And then as that happened, I think you started to get like another group of application layer people, but as well as another generation of like startup business people like kind of came in. And I think like where the brains of like the developers are right now, they're very much application layer people. I think they're more interested in, can my app do the thing I imagine it and want it to do? And I think they're less interested in what are the guts of like this big blockchain computer. And that's why like Thirdweb supports, like I was saying earlier, it's like 700 chains. There's like over 700 EVMs out there, and you can deploy onto all of them. And I talked to all these teams. They all have business development teams that are deeply engaged with lots of projects. And we meet developers that are launching onto chains I've never heard of. And when I talk to them, I'm like, why are you launching onto such and such chain? That's like, it's not even in like the top 300 that I've ever heard on, crypto Twitter. And they're like, well, they have like grants, and like I talked to their team, they're really supportive, and it does like it hits the boxes, like fast transactions and blah blah blah. And it's commodity. Like these chains are starting to like feel commoditized a bit.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in digging into that particular point. Just real quick on the subject, though, like another like huge thing that came along in the past few years was just the development of like Infura and Alchemy, so you can connect to an RPC and fork the mainnet. Because like back in the day, you actually had to, like spin up your own local blockchain. Developers don't need to do that anymore. So it's just it's like a developer paradise. So could you expand a bit more on your point of this concept that like other L2s and other chains are commoditized at this point? Like, I think that's a really interesting debate worth having.
Well, so like I think we can have like an intellectual debate about like where is this like what is the optimal technology? And I hear really smart people on podcasts like Eric Connor talking about this, and I'm sure that like they're correct on like where this all ends. However, in a world of like a lot of entrepreneurs and capital, and it's really easy to fork open source software, it seems like there's a low barrier to entry to launching your own L2 or L1 even. There's even services like Caldera and Conduit where they have an SDK where you can just like one click push a button, boom, you have your own, you have your own EVM roll up. And so in an area where it's really easy to launch your own custom chain that meets the needs of your app, people are going to do it. I actually don't know why necessarily. Like, I think everyone has a lot of different reasons, but it's happening. And then these chains get funding and they're all running a playbook. The playbook is we have a foundation, we have a BD team that's going and talking to projects and making a pitch. We have incentives. We're funding accelerator programs. And so like there's all these different funnels that chains are creating for developers to kind of go down and end up launching on the chain. Those funnels can be incentives and marketing and BD, and it's just happening. And so the question I have, like, these chains are functionally quite similar. I don't think devs are like debating like fractions of a second on finality, or like maybe they are, but I don't really think they are. I think developers are like when I was mentioning earlier, like they're at the app layer, they're really more thinking about, can my user experience work? And can I acquire users to build my business? And so then they're also like, they're really asking like, what's going to de-risk that? And the things that de-risk those questions are like, oh, they're going to give me money, or, oh, they're going to help do marketing for me. So I think like right now we have this phenomenon where we have lots of funded chains though. And the thing that I was wondering about off camera was like, where is this going to go? There's only so many developers. There's like a huge supply of chains. Like, what does that mean? How is that going to play out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, as long as the treasuries have money to throw at the wall, right? I mean, they'll continue to do that. It doesn't mean that they get any traction, though. I think that there's been a shift in this cycle, though, I think, with the addition of all of the app layers and L2s that are being built on Ethereum. You're now starting to see existing chains like Polygon, Cello, a few others that are already explicitly saying like, oh, hey, like we don't want to have our own security set anymore. We just want to be an L2 on ETH. Like, it's not our original intention was never to be a separate network. We wanted to be this like side network. And now we're explicitly voting to come back into the Ethereum ecosystem and build on top. Because like, I think the argument is like, why do you need to run like billions of dollars of extra security for applications, especially in the EVM environment that are doing similar things? Why not just have like, if it's the most capital efficient to just have like ETH as the primary security guarantee, and then just build on top of that and not worry about things, right? Like, there's no reason to have separate sets.
What's amazing is like when we talk to developers, like nobody's having this conversation.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
They're not like, oh, the security assumption, something like, no, that doesn't come up. Like,
well, let me ask a question. Is like Arbitrum has really been killing it this cycle in getting developers to come and also building a narrative as like the best place to go and build. Like, why is that?
I wonder, well, Arbitrum's amazing, but I wonder, where do you get that? What does that mean to you, what you just said? Like, what data did you grab that says like Arbitrum's killing it? Or,
I mean, this is just like general sentiment of when we talk to builders. I mean, this is just the general sentiment is that like, I think it's a mixture of the like the backend stuff, like all the libraries and the ability to build, plus the determination of the foundation to ensure that these projects get the funding that they need to try to jumpstart something on Arbitrum.
It seems like people find Arbitrum to be like really aligned with their ethos with like Ethereum. It seems like they're doing really great with DeFi because of like projects like GMX. They've also got the blueberries. And then like they're focused on gaming. They launched Arbitrum Nova and they have like their Orbits like subchains kind of coming out. So like, yeah, it's a great company. I would say like, Arbitrum, I think chains all have like their different focuses. When I talk to lots of chains, everybody's focusing on gaming. If you talk to a chain and you ask them what is your number one priority, they're going to say it's to sign up game developers. I think and so I think that's like one lens actually to like look at how our chain's doing because they're all focused on games, and you can just ask yourself like how many games are launching, what's the gaming activity look like?
I'm like. Okay, that's news to me because I've been very like bearish on GameFi as a thing.
GameFi, I think, is a made-up term. Like we have so few examples of games, and like GameFi is sort of like DeFi with an 8-bit wrapper around it. It's not actually a game, and like I think GameFi happens when you have real games that produce real IP that people deeply care about, and then just like Counter-Strike skins or like the Skull Trooper skin in Fortnite, like you can really sell it for real money. Then we have the Fi that we can add to the game. But like until then, like I feel like GameFi is, I don't know. I guess I'm not like bearish on it. I just don't feel like it deserves to be a category yet. Just because
I agree as well too. That's strange. I mean, this is the first that I've heard that like all these networks are trying to get games built on them. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Like if you can get a decent game, people are like naturally going to come and they'll have to use your ecosystem.
It's hard to overstate how much of a bubble crypto Twitter is. Crypto Twitter is deeply fascinated by trading. They're very interested in the degenomics of everything, but they're really interested in DeFi. And from like our perspective, like Thirdweb, in the last, like a third of developers have used Thirdweb in all of like crypto, like Web3 development. And in the last year, like 100,000 devs have downloaded our SDKs. And they're making games. They're making NFT projects. None of them are really building DeFi stuff. And like DeFi is a thing. It's just it's a much smaller part of the development. And I think there's fewer projects. They're probably higher impact. They get visibility because of metrics like TVL that like can become pretty impressive. But like I think the bulk of activity of like what kind of software is being made, people are making delightful, distracting things. And like, I think that's what we do in early software. Like if you look at the early App Store, when the App Store came out for the iPhone, what kind of apps did you see in the store? They were all like apps that kind of demonstrated what you could do on a phone. They would be like the night sky and you'd move your phone and see constellations. Or it would be something that would preview like accelerometers on your phone. Like you would tilt your phone and like the water would move. Or it was a button that would make a soundboard. And I feel like that's kind of where we're right now with apps, and people are exploring what sort of like experiences can we create. But talk to every chain and like any BD person, and they will tell you the number of how many games they have like LOIs for. And I think it's because everyone sees like we know what games are. We don't need to invent like a new technology to know what like a delightful game is. Games are very well understood, and it's not hard to add crypto elements to them. I think like
that's my sticking point is that like it's really hard to add in monetary transactions.
I think you're imagining like we need to create like this beautiful like feng shui like flow of money, and it's like the transactions and the economy is all beautiful and it works. When really like we know like if you go to like the Game Developers Conference, like they're giving talks on like here's the playbook to make a game like of any genre, and it's like it's a science. And
well, so, look, I'm not like I am more. I'm more. Oh, let me get my point a little bit. Right. It's not that I don't think that like you could integrate crypto into games, because I think that NFTs probably could be done something. Nobody's really done it yet, but the main thing that I see for it that like gaming could like integrate is just stable coins as a payment system, so that anywhere you're at in the world, you can make these free stablecoin payments that have zero chargebacks, zero credit card fees. Because this is, if you talk to people in like the mobile industry, which is like where a lot of the gaming potential is, they have so much expenses or just lost revenue just from dealing with credit card issuers and chargebacks.
Right, but chargebacks, we have chargebacks for a reason, because like those protect, like some percentage of chargebacks are actually good, and like they protect consumers, and like those issues don't go away. And somebody also, like game companies, like they don't need a game to be like top to bottom decentralized, like in order for them to achieve their goals. And like there's a spectrum of decentralization that people are tapping into. Like they're really just accessing new functionality. And the point that I'm making is on like crypto games, like where they should start is, and where I think we'll see them, because this is where we see a lot of people building. It's like take a normal game and just make some of the items NFTs. Like even that would be amazing, because like that, we know how to make those games. We know how in-app purchases work. Simply putting that on chain is compelling, because we know like how fandom feels about these things. Like I remember playing Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time growing up, and I did the big Goron sword quest, and I would love to have, it would be so cool if I had the original sword that I collected when I was like 11. Like that'd be sick. And in this future world where these games are made, like that will happen. And like that doesn't need to be like a genius brand new crypto integration. It's just simply making the items immutable. So I think we're gonna see a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And all it will take is a hit, and one hit, and you're going to have 50 million users. Like the number of users in all of crypto will like 10x just with one game. That's why everyone's going after games.
I understand where you're coming from. I'm just, I think that the main argument here is that you're like swapping an industry that's gotten addicted to like primary sales with no secondary market, or like very little secondary market. And like,
no, they do it. There's the revealed desire out there. There are secondary markets. And like also those secondary markets don't even need to exist. It's not really that important for it to be on chain. Like I feel like you're prescribing sort of your vision for like what a good game is onto what is happening. And like your version will play out, but there's also going to be many other versions of how people implement like Web3 technologies that will be big. And some of them will not be like these beautiful interwoven economies. They will not be decentralized. They will just use aspects of this, and that will onboard lots of players.
Yeah.
Does that make, you know what I mean? Like, it's not a critique against like how you're seeing it. Like, I think it's yes and I think people will start with simple. They're going to start with what they know plus, instead of like a brand new reinvention.
Well, if they start with stablecoins, that'd be great. I don't, you know, all the other stuff is kind of like more speculative and high risk and stuff. But the stablecoins would be like a really nice place to start for payments.
When we talk to lots of game developers, very few of them want their games connected to any economies. They want their games in a siloed world where they have valueless governance tokens. They find like Avalanche subnets appealing, like that kind of model.
Interesting. Very interesting. Huh. So, like, what is do you guys get a good sense of like what is happening outside of like ETH and the L2s? Like, what's going on in like alt L1 land?
Yeah, I guess. Well, what do you want to like? So alt, you know, we support Solana, so we do see like when we talk to infrastructure companies around, even though like there's major dips in like users in DeFi, we're still seeing a lot of infrastructure companies are saying like they're seeing a lot of activity on Solana. And so I wonder, will there be like another wave of startups that are launching? There's a lot of developer activity that like hasn't launched yet. I
think my question is like, what is the overall health of these ecosystems? So we have like the last cycle, networks, right? Like Solana, AVAX, Phantom's dead at the moment, but
I was just looking at the numbers on like how many contracts, like every week I look at a dashboard that's like how many contracts are deployed on from Thirdweb onto every different chain. And there's about 60 chains that have 20 or more contracts deployed every 30 days.
Oh, wow.
And then if you go up, like our top 20 chains all have, 100 or more, 100 contracts. And like our top 10 chains all have 500 to, 5,000, 2,000 contracts deployed every 30 days. There are like, and sometimes I'm always surprised, like Tyco, they're like one of our top 20 chains. I learned about like Vitalik just tweeted about them, but like over the last 90 days, like they've had over 1,000 contracts deployed onto their test nets. It's impressive to deploy a contract. Like these are thoughtful applications. So we're seeing a lot of, we always wonder like what's driving this. Is it genuine developer interest? Is there like something about Mantle that is drawing people to deploy on there? We're seeing a lot on Linnea's test nets and main nets. There's a lot of interest in base. CeeLo has a tremendous amount of interest. A lot of games are very interested in them. There's a tremendous amount of interest in networks that support account abstraction. Especially games want to have users be able to use the software without needing to get MetaMask. There's a tremendous drop off of like, hello user, you just hit an ad, come download this game or come into this app. Halt, learn this Web3 concept before you proceed down the funnel to like use our application. That's where like 90% of users spill off. And so developers are highly aware of this. This is what I mean, like they're less interested in how the whole blockchain works. They want to know, is their user experience possible? And so people are drawn towards networks where they can have like smart wallets.
Let's talk about account abstraction for a little bit, because I think it's a sleeping giant that a lot of the developer community has seen. And it's gotten quite a lot of talk by a lot of the higher ups in Ethereum, but kind of really hasn't permeated into the wider crypto narrative yet. Obviously, you've mentioned it a couple of times in this interview. What has been your initial impressions about it, and how do you think it's going to fit into the like developer user ecosystem?
I mentioned it before when we were talking before this call. I was trying to say like what's interesting about a platform like Thirdweb being very popular today, and why like and how we have these we didn't have like these comprehensive developer experiences like 2 or 3 years ago. We're able to introduce this functionality to many developers. And so what I've seen is over the last few months, there was a lot of interest intellectually in account abstraction. Which like people were writing papers about it. They were giving talks. Here it's coming. Vitalik talked about it. It also turns out those people were in the know. There were a lot of networks that were, zero knowledge networks that were building support for this. This was a part of what they do. And so people were becoming interested. And like, that's when Thirdweb got interested. And like, we did a hackathon and just, over like a couple of weeks put together like a wallet SDK that would support this. And so on one side, it's like there's intellectual interest, then dev tools actually abstract that idea into tooling and make it available to people. And then at the same time, use cases are coming out that highlight like where this really fits. Like we're starting to see games that are like when you go to the game, you click, you log in, you didn't need to have a wallet. It just generates a wallet that's tied to your device. And so now people are starting to see the solution out there in the wild, and then they go, oh, I want that. I want that in my app. And so I think that's why we're hearing about it more, because like that journey of the idea has gone from pen to paper to you can build with it to, oh, there it is in the wild. And it just feels right. So now people think it's important.
So what's that process for Thirdweb? So let's say there's some new idea, account abstraction, like we just talked about, or like anything else that's really happening through the like infrastructure pipeline that could be 6 months, 3 months, a year away. Like, what is that process of identifying what is substantially additive to the developer process at an early stage? Is it that you're receiving feedback from the developers that are using your system? They're writing you saying, "Oh, hey, I need this. Can you add this?" Or is your team essentially scouting out these ideas and trying to stay ahead of what the narrative is?
Our team we have a whole process around this. And it's not like our first time building a startup. We're still a startup. But this is the same team I said that before we did a startup that Twitch ended up acquiring. That was actually a part of an idea lab where we made like 8 different products. And so we get ideas from a couple places. One of our company values is we're students of Web3. And like a lot of our devs are just obsessed with, they're reading all the blogs, they're listening to the podcast, and they have their finger on the pulse. And so if something becomes really a curiosity to them, like I remember when Vitalik blogged about soul-bound tokens, and like literally a week later, we did a hackathon, and then boom, it was a part of our product because people just found it interesting and they were like, this is going to be a thing. Another source, which is probably a bigger source, is literally our customers. They'll ask us for things and we'll uncover like, what are they really trying to do? And then we'll try to innovate on their behalf. We'll look at all these brands. They want to do like, they're asking for something specific, but they're really trying to just accomplish this. So let's build something. Let's make that easier. Those are the main sources of ideas. It's like our customers or our sort of Web3 curiosity. And we try to build the minimum viable version of something just to get it out there quickly. We believe in shipping every day. We ship new features. We probably have a major release about every 3 or 4 weeks. If you follow our Twitter account, we're always talking about what we ship. And you get it out there, you get data, you see if people like it, and you rip it out if they don't like it, or you iterate on it, make it better if they do like it. That's how the platform has expanded so much. When it first started, Thirdweb was simply a tool that let you, remember how Top Shots had that 3D effect of opening booster packs and like NFTs came out? It started as just that, like, hey, wouldn't you want your NFT project to have that cool effect? And the process of actually building that was so difficult that the founder, like Furkan, was like, we actually have to make dev tools because like this was a nightmare. And so then he started building what would sort of make his life easier. And it's the full stack of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so all this is free to come and use, right?
It's all free. So yeah, we're a Web 2 company insofar as like, we don't have a token, we're not a protocol, but we have Web3 values in that it's all free, it's all open source, and it's like composable insofar as like you can use our defaults, you can change the configurations to use other services if you want to use someone else's RPC node or someone else's fiat on ramp. If we went out of business, you could fork it and run Thirdweb on your own. And we don't host your data, and there's no contract. You could get on a call with us if you want, or you could just sign up, connect your wallet.
So where does the pricing model come in? I mean, it's essentially like get people hooked on the services and then offer premium stuff on the top end.
Yeah, like the business model and like the strategy of the company is make a great developer experience. Like this is the place where you want to build, because there are things that you will have to pay for, like RPC nodes. Like those aren't free. We're giving them away for free to a certain scale, but like when you get beyond that, it's like, all right, now this is where you pay. Or we just acquired a company a week ago called Paper. It's a fiat on ramp. So like there's a certain charge on transactions. Like that's not free. We have a wallet service that's, we're piloting the pricing of that right now, but it's similar to like Magic Link where you like have email sign in where we generate wallets. So, and then we also we support account abstraction. So like we have a paymaster service. So if you're using like our paymasters, like there's a small fee. We'll probably introduce other like pro features in the future, like premium analytics or team support, SLAs for enterprises. But the idea is the developer experience is what is free. So you can build anything, but like if you want to scale your business, that's where we come in.
It's pretty smart. And yeah, that's pretty cool. So the website is thirdweb.com.
Thirdweb.com. Check out our docs. We have an amazing YouTube channel. Reach out to me on Twitter, Jason Hitchcock, if you want to talk to us. If you're a startup, I can help you. Like what I do at Thirdweb is I help startups connect to our network. We have a huge network of investors, of other projects. I'm connected to all the different blockchains if you want to talk to anybody there. And we also have a sister company called Founders Incorporated they incubate. They've made over 200 investments. They're in San Francisco. They have office space. You might have heard of Build Space. They're like out of there. Thirdweb and Paper were both incubated at Founders Inc. We also give credits to startups. We are an ally of startups. Like, we're here to help you. We'll make a Slack channel with our developers. So when your hand's on keyboard, we can talk to you about like, what are you building? Like, no one else can do this for you. Like, we're doing this.
Well, that sounds pretty nice. Definitely going to go and tool around with it and
Definitely.
see how easy.
Like, whether you're at the beginning of your project or it's a mature project, or you know how to code or you don't know how to code, like Thirdweb is usable by all these different types of people. You can launch you can browse any smart contract. It's like it's the best place to browse smart contracts. You can paste in any contract or search for one. We index every chain, and we will like visualize the contract, show you the collections. You can interact with it in a way that's much easier than Etherscan. So yeah, Thirdweb.
Interesting. Well, the link will be in the show notes, and everybody will be able to go and find Jason. We've got his Twitter name here in the handle here at Jason Hitchcock. Jason, thanks for giving an introduction to Thirdweb, and we can move on to some other news that's been happening. We can call this like Hack Day, because there were 3 hacks, I believe, that we have seen. The big one was Eralend, which is the largest lending platform on ZK Sync by TVL. It was hacked for $3.4 million. Initially, we reported this as being $1.7 million, but later on, the hack was found to have been $3.4 million. So unfortunate there. I believe it's a reentrancy hack, and that's unfortunate. So
yeah, since we're on the subject of kind of developer chat, one of the interesting debates that's been going around within the Viper community, which has a reentrancy protection function, is should that just be enabled by default, right? It would cost more gas for every transaction, but the potential to like reduce the risk of such hacks might be worth it. So it's kind of a question in the community, like what threshold of gas saving or gas cost would offset, like, would you consider to offset this?
I think, like, don't you think people would be willing to pay more for that default safety in the culture, and like having people who want to unlock sort of more functionality disable that? Like, that makes sense to me.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
by default, reentrancy safe, and then you could add a decorator to save the gas for it if you were certain. And that's only if you know what you're doing, right?
It really feels like this is still it's like numerically, it's still clearly an unsolved area of development. Like the risk of smart contracts being live and hacks, and like it makes me wonder about like our culture of like auditing firms, and like why isn't there insurance, or where's accountability? Where does it lie? I don't know. This feels like an area that still needs like a lot more innovation.
So additionally, we also have a hack on PalmSwap that was exploited for $900,000. PeckShield reported that the root cause was an internal accounting issue inside their contracts, and this allowed for more UST to be redeemed than was deposited. Also unfortunate as well too. See what else we got.
I mean, the takeaway for people who are getting into DeFi is that none of this is safe. Like all of these are at risk, and if you are going to play with DeFi, make sure it's with money you expect that you are willing to lose. And if you do lose it, like you just keep going on with your life.
And then additionally, we also had the AlphaPo hack. So this was a payment processor. The amount of the funds that were stolen from it has risen to $60 million. Also unfortunate. That's too bad.
Yeah, and it's like, maybe like Lindy is what you can go off of, but like I was shocked by like the reentrancy with Conic. I was like, okay, they've had money in them for, I don't know, almost a year. Like, why didn't that attack happen 6 months ago?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think part of it is just the equation for what gets hacked is TVL times time, right? So for a long time it was under 100 million. And what's really funny about the Conic finance hack is the exploiter got MEV'd and only pocketed 300K off of it. So it was like 3 million in like total hack value or something like that.
Mhm.
And they ended up like walking away with a tenth of that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah. So let's see what else. We had the Curve Try CRV pool, which includes CRV, CRV-USD, and raw Ethereum launch. That's interesting, Garrett.
Yeah, this came out breaking. We're the first news source to report on this, so you heard it here first, at least on YouTube. So basically, like over the weekend, Mitch was asking like for people who use and like Curve pools, which would be the best source of liquidity for you? Would you rather Curve ETH, Curve USD, or Curve ETH, Curve USD? And the latter won the poll, and sure enough, Mitch has already launched and put up some incentives for this pool. So we might expect that this one's going to be a potentially interesting pool to keep an eye on.
Does this use the new gas optimized contract? Like
yes.
So like those are now live.
Those are now live, and one presumes that a lot of the liquidity that was in the Curve ETH pool is going to migrate to this.
What I would love to see on that Curve monitor dashboard that Aldonara put together would be something that gives an indication. I feel like one of the metrics, like a squishy, it might be a squishy metric that the Curve community sort of follows, like anecdotally, is trades that are routing through aggregators through Curve. What is Curve's like progress towards that? Like capturing more and more of the routed trades. Like I would love to see that visualized to see like how are we doing, and like as things like these gas optimized contracts go live, like how do we know there was an impact? Like are more trades routing through? Because that ultimately seems to be like part of the point. A lot of these innovations are around trying to get a larger percentage of these trades.
All right, hear that, Eleonora? We got some feature creep coming for you.
And then it's like, as new pools are launched, like, does that contribute to this metric in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I could speak a little bit. The current place that's mostly being monitored is the Telegram channel. There's the Telegram Curve Monitor backup channel, which is now like, it's very actively followed. There's like 100 people following it. It's how the Conic finance hack was actually detected in the first place, because there's just like a running monitor of all the new TriCrypto NG activity, including like as new aggregators start integrating it, like gets very quickly updated with that. So it's getting close to what the original TriCrypto has. So we're seeing much more. 1inch is now there, CowSwap's there, maybe a few others.
Cool.
So we also had a story about Chainalysis. They are being used as witness testimony in a court case against Bitcoin Fog creator Roman Sterlingov, who created this mixer called Bitcoin Fog. And so this lawyer, Tor Eralend, is making a defense of this Bitcoiner, or the Bitcoin Fog guy, Roman. And he's been going after Chainalysis. He says that Chainalysis does not publish anything about their statistical error rates, and also that they don't really respond to any scientific peer-reviewed papers or anything published anywhere attesting to the accuracy of Chainalysis reactor software. And this was brought up against the CEO of Chainalysis, who was not deposed, but brought on the stand to talk about the software in this court case. So this person essentially said that, So Chainalysis is a like analysis software that goes out and looks at different transactions and tries to piece together who is making what and where. And it's a very difficult process. I think that there are ways to obfuscate like transaction data to make it harder for Chainalysis, especially when you're dealing with mixers like these as well too. Coinbase described the blockchain analytics service as more of an art than a science, and probably because they offer their own analytics service called Tracer. But that's outside the question. These analytics services are becoming quite distributed across the entirety of the centralized crypto ecosystem to prevent illegal transactions from taking place and to ensure they what would it be, the I guess that all parties are able to that at least that they know where these transactions are going, right? That any OFAC sanctioned parties, Iran, North Korea, are kept out of companies like Coinbase or anywhere else, and especially going after mixers as well too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So if you are read through the article, like you'll see that this is fairly core to the case. It sounds like this gambit, with everything I say here, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice or anything like that. We have to have Alex Golubitsky on or some other lawyer who can actually tell us what this actually means. But it looks like they're trying to make like the weakness of Chainalysis a fairly central peg of their case. And this is like, as Sam was saying, like Chainalysis is really big. They have like huge amounts of contracts. They're used all the time for monitoring the chain and like detecting illicit activity. But they like, it looks like they don't do a very good job is the kind of critique against it. Now that being said, I think that the headline's a bit more clickbaity than the actual text of the article. So like in the very first paragraph, like it's sort of like presenting is this gotcha moment where Elizabeth Bisbee, who is head of investigations at Chainalysis, testified that she was unaware of scientific evidence for the accuracy of Chainalysis, which like if true, like that doesn't seem like it's like that big of a deal, right? Like she might be unaware. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Maybe
Right.
like another department did it, right? Like, so I don't think that this is like going to prove in the court of law that Chainalysis is bunk or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's not going to cancel any contracts that they have with the governmental agencies that they work with either.
I heard that the IRS was like the largest. This might not be true, but I heard like maybe a year or two ago they were the largest customer of on-chain data, and it was like through companies like Chainalysis. I don't know. Imagine you're in court, and like, what if like your credit score was used against you? As like, hey, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, how did they calculate that credit score? Like, so I could see like an analogy like that playing out. At the same time, like we should not be shocked that like there are lots of like centralized from like non-crypto land parties interested in structuring on-chain data to see like who is breaking the law. Like we have laws and we have on-chain data to show behavior. So like when people have the behavior that's not legal, like they're in trouble. This is why people should pay their taxes, by the way, when you're in crypto, because like they've pieced this all together. It is very hard to hide, I think, in crypto. It's much harder to hide in crypto than I think people give credit to.
Exactly.
It's like the
right.
only financial advice we provide here is pay your taxes, people.
We also had some more information about Y2K Finance has announced that they're going to deploy repeg vaults. So Y2K is mostly known for depeg vaults where you can buy insurance against stablecoins depegging. But now they're going to have vaults for MAI and MIM to allow people to bet on which direction they're going to go, either above or below the strike at where they are. And so the markets are live now.
Imagine going from like a depeg vault and then being correct and then rolling it to the repeg vault and then being correct.
I think this is super cool, I gotta say, as someone who follows stablecoins pretty intently. So they are starting this with MAI and MIM, both of which are like their pegs are struggling right now. So like previously, like you had been able to like buy the depeg if you thought it was going to repeg. If you thought it was going to like depeg further, like there wasn't always great options to do so. I'm curious what you all think if MAI and MIM are doomed, by the way.
It's just very strange. I mean, it's very strange because like I've used KeyDAO before and MIM as well too. And these are like debt-based CDPs. You're borrowing MAI and MIM against your positions so that you can get leverage or essentially take these loans. And if MAI depegs, like I just checked the MAI price, it just depegged like on Sunday down to 91 cents. That's that's you can buy your debt back on on pennies on the dollar. It's very strange.
Yeah, so I don't really understand what's going on. I think we should be able to get Benjamin from Cheetah on to talk about it, hopefully.
I think it's the phantom exposure. So
That's my guess too. I talked with him a bit, and he didn't seem too concerned. He said that the collateralization rate's super high. So, like, I'd probably not financial advice, but maybe I'll stroll on over to Arbitrum and try out Y2K Finance. Bet on some Ivory Peg.
So you can pick up where was I looking at this? So on Phantom, you can pick my up for 64 cents on the dollar. Well, but there's not that much liquidity there. There's only 2,002% depth, so it's not huge, but it still is there. But still, on QuickSwap, you can buy 2%, so you can get like $35,000 worth of my at like 95 cents. So you're essentially the cool thing about my is KeyDAO is they don't have any interest on the loans. You just pay a flat fee on when you pay the asset back. So you get a no interest loan, plus you can buy your debt back at 95%. It seems natural that you should go there and use that.
And one thing
I remember the last time I was considering buying a stable coin at 60 cents, thinking okay, it was UST. I was like, yeah, oh my God, it's so down. No, I didn't though, but
one thing people don't know much about Mai is that it's by number of users, one of the highest used stable coins, because they launched mostly off of Ethereum mainnet. So if you look at the total number of users charts, Mai is always right up there. So definitely hoping for a speedy recovery for the team.
Yeah. So what else do we have that happened yesterday? So now there are 4 bills in the U.S. Congress that are trying to regulate crypto. There's 2 bills in the Senate, I believe, and then 2 bills in the House. And so the most recent bill was introduced by Patrick McHenry that would come in and hopefully provide some better understandings about how we can navigate these crypto ecosystems. So we will find
to add to that.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add.
When we talk to game developers, from Thirdweb, a lot of game developers want regulatory clarity. They bring it up in conversation. They're like, are the assets in our game, what's going to happen to them? Are these video game assets, or are these going to be considered some sort of are players going to get taxed when they are doing things in our game? That's a real concern to them.
Well, that's going to wrap.
Yep. Lawyers on for a lawcast sometime this week. Go through it.
Lawcast. So this is going to wrap it up for this week. I want to thank Jason for coming on again. Or not this week, for Tuesday.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be on. Thanks for giving dev tools a space, in DeFi land. And huge fan of what you're doing. So yeah, glad to be part of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, come back anytime.
My pleasure.
Feel free to come back on. All right. Thank you, Jason. And we will see everybody tomorrow.